Ayan na, ayan na. Andyan pa kayo? Nakalimutan nyo na ako eh. Hindi na ata ako magpakita kahapon. Sorry folks, sobrang grabe. Pagod ako yesterday. I think nagkasakit ako or something because wala, nag-all-nighters ako trying to finish some book projects and all. But ito, feeling better, feeling medyo more fresh. So hopefully andyan kayo. Nakikinig ba kayo dyan? Mukhang ang dami nangyari kahapon na habang nagre-recover tayo, nagpapahinga tayo, mukhang may interview, no? Tumuloy yata, natuloy yung interview ni Vice President LENI Robredo dyan sa DZRH ba yan? At mukhang isa sa mga kaibigan natin had, his moment with the Vice President. At mukhang may back and forth na exchanges na mukhang interesting. At ay, may mga Ukraine-Russia, tanong-tanong pa, diba? In fairness, very foreign policy expert yata mga kaibigan natin ngayon, no? Pag-usapan natin yan. At of course, nagretiro na rin po yung ating former senior commissioner, no? Commissioner Guanzon, now of course is now in a crusade to, expose allegedly, no, yung deficiencies within the guardrails of our democracy, no? So I think dalawang topic yan na pwedeng pag-usapan ng mabuti today. I look forward to your questions and all. Sorry nga, medyo delayed reaction tayo. Gusto natin sana mag-respond kahapon pa. Mukhang may mga nagtitrending pa over Twitter and all. Una, let me say this. Kudos to Vice President LENI Robredo for saying yes to an interview with a panel, no, na composed of panel that potentially, or some would say, had individuals who were openly against her, no. So this is interesting because Senator Bongbong Marcos, former Senator Bongbong Marcos, turned down interview with Jessica Sow kasi daw biased si Jessica Sow, and we all know she's a world-class journalist, and she never came out and said na masama ang mga ganito ganyan, no, or openly say very negative things about the Marcoses. Hanapin yan, no, show me the evidence, right? Hindi yung interview na nabuking niya yung mga politiko na hindi makakasagot. Hindi na kasalanan ni Jessica Sow yan, di ba? But in the case of LENI Robredo, there were initially some allegations or imputation na hindi siya nagpakita dun sa DZRH ba yan or something like that dahil daw baka magiging hostile or something yung question na answer. In fairness naman sa DZRH, they're very professional. They're one of the leading radio networks out there. But of course, one of the panelists there, some would say, is someone who's not very fond of the Vice President. And ano yung mga tinanong sa kanya? Tinanong ba't yung issue ng yung mga kamehameha niya at saka yung mga Street Fighter niya. Well, honestly, bati ako, di ba? Para sa and then later on, parang ni-raise din ang issue ng Ukraine, Russia, foreign policy, etc. At in fairness kay Vice President LENI Robredo, pinakita niya na she has some basic familiarity with, una-una, ilan yung OFW dyan sa Ukraine na kailangan natin i-rescue. Pangalawa, yun nga, we have to talk about coalition of nations. I think that's really the right way to look at it. Because honestly, anyone who says anything about foreign policy, whereby nire-reduce niya yung buong foreign policy sa issue ng US versus China, ito ang masasabi ko dyan, they don't know what they're talking about. They have a very, very shallow understanding of geopolitics. Tayo po ay nagsulat ng volumes and works and books. Isa sa mga volumes ko ipopost ko mamaya is about the role of middle powers. Actually, there's a deep theoretical and academic tradition analyzing the role of middle powers. Medyo wide yung spectrum of middle powers, but you can put countries as big as India and Japan there. You can put countries as small as, for instance, United Arab Emirates, Singapore there, right? Generally, middle powers are countries na hindi pa superpower level, but they have the credibility, they have the capacity, they have the soft power, and they have the commitment, no, to build coalitions, to push for yung mga reforms sa international systems, and to help, no, us to be less bullied by the superpowers. Kaya nga minsan, meron kang situation kung saan European countries stand up to Donald Trump. Australia stands up to Donald Trump. May cases tayo na Australia standing up to China later on. May cases naman tayo na, countries within ASEAN, sabi natin Indonesia or Singapore, trying to play an international role of mediator or interlocutor sa pagitan ng China and the West. So, all of these countries matter. So, kung sinabi mo ating foreign policy, dyan saan tayo tataya, doon tayo sa Amerika, doon tayo sa China, that's pathetic. That's pathetic. That's not the way to think about it, right? because international relations goes way beyond just the US-China rivalry. It's a big factor. It's a big, big factor. I had the whole book on that issue, US-China rivalry. Actually, 2 books on that. Sure, and countless articles and all. But there are all other options out there. And ito nga yung issue dito eh. Hindi naman natin sinasabi na mag-alay tayo sa US versus China. Ang pinag-usapan dito is European Union, Australia, Japan, India, right? Vietnam, so many other countries, even South Korea sometimes, Canada. Lahat ng mga bansa na yun may shared interest na hindi magkakaroon ng isang malaking bully dito sa South China Sea. No? Na yung sea lines of communications po ay open. No? So whenever I hear this very simplistic framing of foreign policy issues, oh, dun tayo sa US, oh, dun tayo sa China, my goodness, these people don't know what they're talking about, diba? These people don't know what they're talking about, no? So, now, may mga vloggers dyan na gusto magyabang dyan at mag-post at mag-troll sa atin. Go ahead, diba? Pero akin lang naman, be my guest. Publish an academic book. Publish a journal article, peer-reviewed article. Pag-usapan natin yan. You want to criticize my work? Go into detail into my academic works and critique it accordingly if you want. But make sure, no, substantiated yan. Hindi ako papatol sa mga ano lang, mga FB pot shots and mga cheap shots and all of that. Anyways, so lahat ng mga issue na yan po ay napag-usapan natin in detail and all. So in fairness naman, yeah, Leni Robredo is not an expert in foreign affairs, and I think she's still in, you know, hopefully, you know, it's going to be a steep learning curve, and hopefully, you know, she's going to be more and more familiar with these issues. I haven't had the chance to talk to her so far, right? I mean, except, you know, back in the days or when my interview kami with Bloomberg, 2 of us, nag-meet kami shortly and all, just courtesy. But I have not been in conversation with Vice President Leni Robredo. I've been trying to arrange an interview with her, as in other candidates. May 2 presidential candidate na interview natin. We're hoping to interview Senator Pacquiao, Senator Lacson. Tingnan natin kung si Bibi ang papayag. But just disclosure, no, November pa, I actually made some request, if possible, with sila Leni. May umupo dyan sa invitation na yan. I don't know what. Now, hindi tayo celebrity, hindi tayo mga... ang interviews ko hindi yung pa-cute lang, pa-talks lang. If I'm gonna interview her, it's gonna be serious interview, it's gonna be policy-oriented interview, and hindi ako pa blogger, right? You've seen how I question Isko Moreno, you have seen how I question, you know, defense secretaries, Prime Minister Mahathir, etc. You can see all of my interviews online. Na very thorough po yung discussion natin, hindi pa cute and all. Now, so I cannot say personally how familiar Vice President Leni Robredo is really with issues, because I haven't had that extensive exchanges with her. But in fairness, I would say that maganda yung pagka-handle niya ng pressure. Some would even say aggressive questioning and etc. I'm not there to judge because I have to talk to both parties, including a former colleague of mine, in order to properly understand what went on there. But in fairness, I think, you know, a former colleague of ours raised some legitimate questions. We can have issues about how it was raised and all. And in fairness to Vice President Leni Robredo, pinakita niya na may understanding siya ng at least basic nuances sa 21st century geopolitics. Hindi po ito Cold War kung saan it's just Soviet Union and US. In fact, even during the Cold War, China was a factor in the 70s and 60s after the Sino-Soviet split, no? Kaya nga US teamed up with China against Soviet Union, and then later in Vietnam, pro-Soviet Union, inaway niya yung Cambodia, Khmer na pro-China. Ang gulo nun, di ba? But anyways, reducing things to just US versus China, saan tayo tataya, just completely misses the point, right? So I have big problems with politicians, with bloggers, whoever, na nagpapa-foreign policy tapos sabi na, hindi ayaw natin sumali dyan sa away ng 2 higante na yan. First of all, international politics is just not about their rivalry. Second, those superpowers are reaching out to their allies and other countries to take them to their sides. Meron tayong mga tinatawag na so-called middle powers na meron din power and influence. At ang pinag-usapan naman dito po is shared interest. Dyan sa West Philippine Sea, do we have shared interest with US or China? Right? Sino bang kalaban natin dyan? Right? Sino bang may treaty alliance sa atin, right? Yes, nothing is perfect. There's no perfect alliance. Pero sino may treaty alliance sa atin? Saan tayo pwede kumuha ng tulong? Saan ba galing yung threat? Diba? Yan po ang pinag-usapan natin dito, no? So, yun yung mga nuances at nawawala. At nakikita mo sa framing ng questions pa lang, it really betrays lack of understanding of international politics, especially in the 21st century, which is very multifaceted and all. Now, hindi naman kailangan magbasa ng mga deep theory ng mga tao. rhizomatic theory of international relations, etc. Or mag-Foucault, etc. But sana naman, di ba? Now, alam ko may mga ano dyan eh. May mga... alam ko may mga ano dyan eh. Maraming... in fairness naman, maraming natuwa kay LENI. Vice President LENI Robredo showed na hindi siya natatakot. She can have questions and from anyone. She can have interviews with any sides, whether biased or hindi, that she can handle pressure as gracefully as possible and answer questions without pretending to know more than she does, but at the same time capture the essence of yung issue na nare-raise dyan. So in fairness, I think that was a good performance by Vice President LENI Robredo kahapon. And looking forward, I think my debate tomorrow, right? Co-hosted by CNN Philippines, I think TV5 and ABS-CBN, right? So let's look forward. Buti nga hindi siya naging full manel dahil andyan si Karen Davila. So let's see anong mangyari dyan at pag-usapan din natin yung mga performances. But that's the that LENI Robredo showed that she can handle different interviews, even some would say aggressive questioning, etc. That tells you something about the mettle of her leadership. Now, dito sa issue ng Guanzon, sorry, I'm gonna keep our discussion short today kasi nag-recover pa ako at habol pa ako sa work. But we're gonna have more discussions on hopefully. Ano ba yan? Yes. Yung kay Commissioner Guanzon, it's a big issue. It's a big issue because unang-una, yun nga, bakit hindi na-release yung Division 1 resolution noon pa lang? Alam natin, 2 weeks ago pa dapat lumabas yan. Bakit nilabas kagad yung Division 2? Ang haba-haba pa. Yung decision nila na in favor of Bongbong Marcos. Pero dito, na may at least isa na confirm, especially yung senior commissioner na against Marcos biglang ang delayed. At parang yung timing ay parang parang yung timing is tumutugma doon sa paparetire na yung nag-vote against the the person the candidate in this case, no? So yun nga eh. And mahalaga talaga yung trabaho ng Commission on Elections because they have quasi-judicial and at the same time administrative executive functions. Sila po ay may quasi-judicial functions kasi sila magde-decide sinong nuisance, sinong dapat ma-disqualify, sinong dapat pwede tumakbo, hindi. So that's a quasi-judicial function. At the same time, meron din sila administrative functions. So siguraduhin nila na hindi nagkaroon ng vote buying, hindi nagkaroon ng dayaan, etc. At saka yung smooth yung process ng election from the registration all the way to the counting of the votes and all. Mahirap po yung trabaho ng Commission on Election. So talaga dapat walang bahit na duda doon sa kanilang commitment to a fair, neutral, pluralistic, democratic practice, no? So in this sense, yes, retired na si Guanzon ngayon, but eto na nga eh, if you're gonna retire, you want to end on a good note, right? You want to end on a note kung saan pinapakita mo na dignified ka, na successful ka, na you stood by your vision, your mission at of course you want to look forward to retirement with prestige and glory. And that's why Senior Commissioner Guanzon wouldn't have come out and guns blazing and naghamon na and all of that on Twitter kung hindi talaga siya galit. Hindi siya talaga galit, no? Of course, we have to have a proper investigation into what on earth really went on there, right? At hindi lang natin ipa-hush-hush lang yan and forget about it. I hope hindi lang magiging one-week news cycle yan. I hope talagang titignan ng mabuti yan. Kasi kung wala ang tiwala ng tao doon sa mga referees mismo, ito po ay pwede makapag-apekto doon sa credibilidad of the whole election process, among others. So I think it's really incumbent upon the Commission on Elections right now to reassure the public that their independence and their commitment as a neutral arbiter and administrator of the electoral process, andun pa rin yan, no? Kasi kung wala yan, magulo yan. Now, magiging lalong magulo yan if ever, the race actually becomes more competitive. Ngayon kasi, of course, meron tayong front-runner na medyo malayo-layo. So, if election day comes and ganun pa rin yung trend line, it will be easy for that candidate to say, well, panalo naman talaga ako, etc. But if the race narrows down and then meron din bahid ng duda dun sa proseso mismo, that's not gonna be very helpful for democracy. Thankfully, wala tayong nagkaroon ng post-electoral massive protests and violence katulad ng nangyari sa ibang bansa or even yung level lang Indonesia, no? After the last 2 presidential elections when yung mga supporters ni Prabowo ay hindi nila natatanggap yung talo nila kay Jokowi, no? But, you know, if we don't play our, cards well in the sense that hindi natin ayusin yung mga pagkakulang sa ating sistema and all, this can come back and bite us, no? And I'm sure all candidates, including Senator Marcos, they would want people to have full confidence and trust in the election process, especially if ikaw ay leading, no, at may chance na manalo dito, no? And of course, for the opposition, Commissioner Guanzon can become a kind of a rallying cry. I mean, she definitely is, saying this as someone who was dedicated to her job as a commissioner in the COMELEC. But of course, I'm sure there are elements in the opposition among others will try to, rally around her cause and her complaints and all to cast doubt dito sa election process, credibility of election process. So malaking issue yan. So sana talaga Commission on Election comes with ways to reassure the public on this issue. And yun nga, ang gulo eh. I mean, look at the past 5-6 years. Open fight sa Supreme Court. Open fight dun sa Speaker of the House, Arroyo versus Alvarez. Now, open fight dito sa Commission on Elections. What's going on? Diba? What's going on? Ito ba yung real change na sinasabi? So yun lang para sa akin. Na I feel talagang we have to do something about it. Alright? Okay. I don't want to say more because we hope to interview some people, including potentially, let's see kung ma-arrange pa natin yan, si Commissioner Guanzon and mga others, para they can say their own part. I don't want to talk too much and get into this discussion because I want to be in a better position to interview these people in a fair way, in the most fair way possible. Kasi kung masyado isingit ko yung sarili ko sa debate, that may affect our ability to properly get the conversation going. Hopefully, we can get James Jimenez and other people to also say their side, no?